I'm great. How are you doing?
Good. We're in Atlanta. We're doing trade tasting and consumer event here tomorrow. So yeah, we had a friend's engagement party yesterday and just doing some computer work today.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Um, that's fantastic. I let's see. I'm going to give you an introduction, but I have to start with saying that I was talking about this interview with one of my coworkers, and he was talking about the interview or the tasting and book signing that you did at Joe's a few weeks back, and he's like, "It's my buddy Brett," and he's like, "So Jane, have you worked in the industry for a while?" And you were like, where do I start? So that's to say, you're Jane Lopez, Master
Lopes.
Sommelier.
Lopes,
Jane
actually.
Lopes, exactly. Jane Lopes, uh, Master Som, runs Legend Imports with your husband John,
Yeah.
who seems pretty rad too.
He's all
Worked at
right.
Yeah. Worked at the Violet Hour, Catbird Seat in Nashville, 11 Madison Park, ever heard of it? And Attica in Melbourne,
Hmm.
which is pretty awesome. And then you started Legend in 2020 in the middle of a pandemic. So thanks for joining us. We're featuring two of your wines in our wine club. And I have those with me in my bag around the corner. Thanks for doing this. Zoom is like a great way to connect with customers, and so everybody in our wine club will get to see this video, and but also I'll use it to write our notes and stuff about it. So, what did I miss anything?
No, I think that's more than enough.
Okay.
I will, and I can mention this too. We're writing an Australian wine book that's going to come out later this year. So, we kind of living in Australia made us really feel like there needed to be better exposure to the great wines of Australia. There need to be better educational resources for people to learn about Australian wine. So it's kind of our mission now.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that because I was reviewing the section in your book vignette, that I have about Aussie wine, and I was like, God, it's so small for someone who has such a passion for this. And yeah.
Well, I wrote a good amount of that book before I moved to Australia.
Okay.
And then, yeah, I, obviously wanted that book is kind of designed to be pretty, I guess, well-rounded in terms of like touching on a lot of major styles of wine and, and spirits and cocktails and stuff like that. But yeah, this is now it's all Australia all the time.
Awesome. Well, it's your wines have helped. Like, I've wanted to get Australia back in front of our customers more. The wines that y'all import have really helped me do that, given me a reason to do it. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Yeah, I would
But
really appreciate the support.
on your website, there's a bunch of really cool stuff, including your accountability report and all and the what what y'all picture from the suppliers that you work with. So how did you come to, we're talking about Montevecchio and Sunspell. How did you come to be with most of those suppliers that y'all are with now?
You mean our producers?
Yeah, the producers.
Almost everyone in our portfolio right now are producers that John and I worked with while we were wine buyers in Australia. So, we both had the opportunity over the 3 years we were there to really kind of taste almost everything as much as we could. And, these were kind of the producers that we fell in love with, that we bought the wines at our restaurants. We, served them by the glass, and we paired them with meals, and, we saw them making people happy. So, you know, that was kind of it. We knew these wines, we had the relationships. So that is the case for the Montevecchio wines made by the Chalmers family. We both worked with those at our restaurants, our respective restaurants in Australia. Sunspell is actually a new brand that we developed, but with two winemakers who we had worked with in Australia. So the four of us, you know, they kind of came to us and said they had a line on some really great, affordable Cabernet fruit, and did we want to do a collaboration? And, you know, we, you know, part of our belief, like we, you know, we maybe not clearly, but we, we have drank and continue to drink the great wines of the world. And we like to, you know, be up on what's going on in Burgundy and Champagne, and certainly the greatest wines across Australia, which obviously all come with a price tag to match. But we also both really believe that, you know, good wine should be accessible to everyone. And we sometimes feel that at lower price points, I don't know, wine is almost dumbed down a bit, and that doesn't do a service to the people drinking those wines, you know. And we saw so much, and I don't know if I'm getting ahead of myself, but we saw so much. We did market research for this project, and we drank a lot of like Cabernet that retail between, you know, $15 and $20. And, you know, we saw a lot of them were thick and heavy and alcoholic, and, you know, looked to be like artificially colored and oak chipped. And we just felt like, you know, that's not necessarily everyone wants to drink wine like that, you know, at any price point, but just the options weren't there at kind of that lower price point. So we, you know, we felt the fruit quality was incredible. We tasted kind of samples from the vineyards, and we thought, what if we kind of just let this be and let it kind of, you know, be a really clean, bright, still really juicy, like not in any way thin or lean or overly dry, but this like juicy, bright, little bit fruity, little bit savory, unoaked style of Cabernet. And we've just been really happy with the result. We've been really happy with the reception. You know, I feel like we get the people who like, you know, big brawny cabs, because it does have that kind of depth of flavor and that juiciness. But we also get a lot of people who don't typically like cab. Who, you know, I can't tell you how many times we taste that wine and people, and they're like, oh, I'm not normally a cab drinker, but I like this. It's not oaky. It's not like super dense. There's really a kind of a brightness and a lightness to it that I think kind of appeals to a lot of different palates.
Yeah, that you can definitely count me into the group that was taken off guard by it in the best way, like in a way that I was just like, damn, we should put this in the club, because it's just a really fun representation of cab, and I feel like the name suits it because it is like a ray of sunshine shining through all the thick cab that people drink. And it, like, people drink a lot of cab, and so we don't just want to use one of those multitudes of other cabs that you're talking about. If we're going to feature cab, we want it to definitely be different and show another side of things. So yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, we wanted the branding to kind of, you know, intimate that this wasn't, you know, apothic cab. This wasn't like the like dripping, dark, deep, you know, in those labels kind of tend to match those wines. So yeah, you're absolutely right. We wanted that to feel like, kind of let people know what's going to be in the bottle.
Yeah, it seems like they were decorated by the same people who decorate the house and What We Do in the Shadows, or like a vampire's house or something like that.
Love that.
So okay, well, that's great. And those grapes come from all over Southeast Australia, or
3 GIs in South Australia.
Okay.
So all South Australia, it's Riverland, Coonawarra, and Barossa Valley.
Okay, awesome. And okay, so the Sunspell stuff is really great. That cab is fantastic, and I'm really excited for that to be in people's regular rotations. And I think you can drink it any time of year too. What would you pair it with if you were working on a pairing for that?
You know, I think it's like, I do think it's like the quintessential burger wine.
Okay.
Because I don't think you necessarily want a ton of tannin for a burger, but nor do you need a ton of acidity. I think if anything, you kind of need that juiciness that can go well with like, ketchup and caramelized onions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And even like, it's actually like a blue cheeseburger. It's really, really good with.
Okay.
But I also think it's like, it's just one of those wines that's like a good go-to because it can go well with a lot of different things. It wouldn't be my first choice for like fish, but I do think there's like situations of like, fried shrimp with like a shrimp cocktail could be like actually pretty cool with that,
Okay.
But I think like, I think we hear people talk a lot about it's like great pizza wine, great pasta wine, that like red sauce, tomato, something like that. So, I think it's like, yeah, kind of hard to go wrong with like anything that's sort of a red wine pairing, but even some things that are kind of classically not. But I do just think I like it with savory food, certainly not sweet food, but savory food that just has that little bit of sweetness, like in ketchup or like a cocktail sauce or something like that, because it's so juicy. I feel like it really kind of matches up to something like that.
Awesome. So it kind of does like some of the work that an Italian red might do, which is fun because our friends at Chalmers, who grow at least 42 different grapes right now, and
that sounds right.
yeah, they seem to also have an eye for Italian flair as well.
Well, it's even more than that. They are the reason that there are so many Italian grapes in Australia. They started their vineyard in a region called Murray-Darling in northern Victoria in the 1980s. And, this is a very hot, dry kind of Mediterranean style climate. And everyone was planting Cabernet and Syrah and Shiraz, Chardonnay. And they just felt like, God, there's got to be, grapes that are better suited to this climate. They're going to have better results that we'll have to use less water for. And so they did their research. They kind of just said, they looked to the world, what could work here. And they, really took them to Italy, which of course is a warm, dry Mediterranean climate. And so then in the late 90s, they started looking for a more premium wine region I skipped over a part. So they started their own vine nursery. They started importing their own vine material. And, in the beginning, people were like, you're crazy. It's hard enough to sell Shiraz from Murray-Darling. How are we going to sell Neradavila? So they kind of stuck to their guns, and they really believed in the project. And so in the late 90s, they looked for a vineyard that would be a kind of a pinnacle site for these grapes, because Murray-Darling is kind of it's an exciting region, and it's really kind of having a renaissance, but it is flat, pretty highly irrigated, a little bit higher yielding region. So it's a great region for kind of cheap and cheerful wines. They actually make wines from this region that I think are absolutely delicious, but they wanted to find a more kind of pinnacle region for these grapes where they could really make the greatest expression that Australia was capable of. And so that's what brought them down to Heathcote, which is in central Victoria. So just a couple hours pretty much due north of Melbourne and the southeastern corner of the country. And it's warm, dry Mediterranean climate, but more varied topography, higher elevation, lower yields, everything's hand harvested, that sort of stuff.
Okay.
So that's kind of where a bulk of most of their production comes from these days, and kind of all their premium wines. And that's where the Montevecchio Bianco comes from. So the Montevecchio, they do a Bianco and a Rosso release every year, and these are field blends of largely Italian grape varieties. I think all Italian grapes except Graciano, which, as far as I know, is a Spanish grape, but maybe there's something I don't know. Maybe there's an Italian home for it, but I mean, they're true field blends in the sense that the grapes are co-fermented, but I suppose they're not co-planted. So they know, they're different, separate vines. They know where the vines are, and there are slightly different harvest times. So basically they have sort of this long ongoing ferment as they kind of add different grapes to the mix. And I just think it's like a absolutely incredible skill. It's one thing to be able to, you know, kind of in a lab by micro testing, be able to kind of blend finished wines. But it's quite another to like blend grapes before and during fermentation and know that it's going to turn out well. And they're just incredibly good at it. And the blends are quite different every year and always, I mean, in the handful of vintages I've had, just always really, really delicious. So this vintage, the 2021, and I'm going to look at my notes, is 33% Ribolla Gialla, 24% Falanghina, 23% Vermentino, 9% Pecorino, 6% Fiano, 3% Moscato Giallo, and 2% Anzolia.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
so
fun.
Really, I mean, really, really special wine. I think you could put these up against like Italian white wines that were easily double the price and they would hold their own. They're really kind of just the complexity, the concentration, the integrity, but also the freshness. You know, it's not like these are like massive wines. There's still a ton of freshness to them. Yeah, I just think they're phenomenal.
Yeah, I think they're phenomenal too. We just so when you were in town, you did tasting at Joe's as well as a book signing, and also did a dinner at Catherine and Mary's. So we were just filling the orders for that today, and the Montevecchio Rosso was one of the wines, which there were cases of those going in boxes this morning.
Amazing.
I have that in my backpack, but those wines were extremely well received, and obviously they used them at an Italian style wine dinner. So like you're saying, I think that they have great cross appeal. Here's the Rosso, because I drank all the white that is the Bianco is gone. We'll drink all that, so we'll just have to wait for that to arrive next month. Of course, here's Sunspell, which is great too. Yeah, it is really awesome to have all the varieties on the back like that. You're just like, it's crazy, and it's also makes the wizardry that they're doing of blending all those together even more impressive.
Yeah, it really is. I think wizardry is a really good word.
I was reading of an Etna book, and they were talking about how they would make field blends back in the day before they really understood how everything with grapes. They would make field blends because they needed an element from each one of them, right? That's like an idea behind blending. But it's a whole nother level that they're doing at Chalmers with that blend. Obviously,
yeah, but that's exactly part of it, where it's, you know, each year kind of I mean, as you said, they grow, you know, dozens and dozens of different grapes. So it's kind of finding the components that are going to work well together. And, we probably need a little more acidity. Let's do 4% of this and it's going to be our backbone because it looks great this year. So it's really cool. It's like, I'm always really excited to see what the blend's going to be for the next Montevecchio. Because like the last year it was more than 50% Vermentino, and this one Ribolla Gialla is the largest grape, but it's only 33%. So it's really cool. I mean, and this wine, I mean, anything you would pair an Italian white wine with, it works really well. Like certainly, you know, seafood, any sort of like vegetable dishes. I would say like non-tomato based pasta dishes. It's really good. But it does have like there's like just a texture and a concentration that I think I pair with this with like some heavier things too. Like I think it's good with like a pork chop with like, you know, mustard, or certainly with roast chicken, something like that. It's, you know, I feel like this and the Sunspell are both very versatile, and there's probably like a Venn diagram of like better for Sunspell, better for Montevecchio, and the things that they're both good for. But between the two of these wines, you really kind of cover your bases in terms of things you can pair with it.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to hear what people will be pairing them with at home. Let's see, the Chalmers Nero d'Avola is something we carry as well. We also just got, is it a pet nap, the like sparkler that you did at the dinner? The
Oh, the Col Fondo.
Col
Yeah,
Fondo.
yeah, it is. It's not quite pet nat. So it is undisgorged, but it's traditional method. So
Okay.
it's I get it would be kind of like the cleanest, driest style of pet nat you're gonna see.
Okay. Great. I've seen some pretty dirty ones from Australia, so that
It
it's
is
good to
not
see.
one of those.
It's good to see the full gamut.
Yeah. No, it's very, I mean, that wine is cool because like I feel like I can pour it for my friends who like want something out there, but then I can also pour it for people who just want like rosé champagne and they'll like it because it's very versatile. It's clean. It's not yeah, it's not out there, you know, it's not too out there. So it's absolutely delicious. Aglianico, 100% Aglianico.
Awesome. And then speaking of sparkling wine, you also represent Henskens Rankin from Tasmania, which is cool. I think a lot of people don't know that there's anything in Tasmania other than cartoon devils, but there's a whole world of wine and spirits and stuff that come from there.
I mean, Tasmania is where my husband and I want to retire. It is heaven on earth. We love it so much. It's just this like pint-sized little island. It's about the size of West Virginia.
Okay.
But with 18% of the population.
Wow.
And, you know, West Virginia is not the most populated state in the country. So there's really almost no one on the west. It's very sparsely populated on the west side of the island. That's like kind of temperate rainforest. Everything is on the east side of the island, and of the wine regions included. It's considered, I mean, it really is almost exclusively premium wine. I think about 2,000 hectares under vine, so like about the same size as like Barolo, and probably kind of a similar price point. A lot of sparkling wine, a lot of Pinot Noir, a lot of Chardonnay, but then like some amazing Riesling and Sauvignon Blanc and a variety of things. But yeah, sparkling wine is what Tasmania has kind of become known for. And I tasted with Frida Henskens right before I left Australia in 2020. And so it's a couple, Frida Henskens and David Rankin, and they made their first wine in 2010, but they didn't release that wine until either 2019 or 2020.
Wow.
So it's, you know, a very long time on lees. I think that wine was 6 years on lees, and then another couple years post disgorgement age. And they, you know, Frida and David both have other gigs, you know, making minute quantities of really long aged sparkling wine doesn't quite pay the bills, but they really believe in it, and they believe that Tasmania is capable of making the best sparkling wine in the world, or at least amongst it. But they believe that it, you know, to kind of achieve that pinnacle of quality, you have to do these like small batches, and you have to do, you know, long aging. So it's really just a labor of love. I mean, I think there's a lot of great Australian sparkling wine. I have to say, I think it's the best. And we represent other, you know, great Australian sparkling wine, but it's just, it really, to me, it stands up against great champagne. It's absolutely phenomenal. So right now we have in stock their 2011 vintage Brut, which is a blend of Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, and their 2013 Brut Rosé, which is also a blend of Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. And they're just so good. Yeah, they just like, those wines make me smile. They're like absolutely phenomenal.
Well, they made one of my friends smile this weekend. They had a dinner at Taylor in Germantown, Nashville, and they sent me 3 pictures, and it was La Grande Dame, and then it was a Dom Perignon 2000 vintage, and then it was a picture of the Henskens Rankin Brut, and they were like, these are all awesome. Do you have this Tasmanian champagne? I need to get some of this. And I was like,
Amazing.
we can get you some of this. Don't worry. Before I won't even correct you on champagne for sure. That's how apparently convincing it is that everyone just thinks it's champagne. So
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, if you're the blind taster, there's no way you wouldn't think it's champagne.
okay, awesome.
Well, I love that story. I love that the wines are getting out there and people are talking about them. They're really special.
Yeah. Okay, what else do you want to talk about from Legend and all the awesome stuff y'all do?
Oh, you know, I feel like a conversation of our portfolio should touch on Seppeltfield,
Yeah.
because, you know, this winery was founded in 1851, among the, you know, it's among the most historic in all of Australia. And they make, everything goes through their gravity fed cellar that was built in 1888. And it's like super affordable Australian classics done incredibly well, like done for a modern palate. Like just have incredible freshness, incredible balance. Like, you know, sometimes when people think of Australia, especially the Barossa Valley, they think of these like clunky, heavy, sometimes sweet red wines. And you know, it certainly is a warm climate there and they're making warm climate wines, but like they really always find like impeccable structure and freshness. So they have, you know, Shiraz, Grenache, Riesling, and now Cabernet Sauvignon that they do part of their, what they call their village range. And I forget, what did you guys charge for the Seppeltfield on your shelves? Like 22, 20?
Yeah, something like that. I remember it was the first thing to sell out during your tasting.
Yeah.
We did. And that's probably because we'd already sold so much of it before leading up to that. But
it's just, I mean, it's, I think to have this history, this quality, this integrity at this price point is just like, I mean, it's really unheard of, I think, anywhere in the world. And so, you know, those wines are very, very exciting to us. And they also make some of the best, you know, most exciting fortified wines in Australia. I would say in the world. They have kind of their Para series, which is named after a river in the Barossa. And it's GSM, Grenache Shiraz, Matara, Mourvedre. They do a 10-year non-vintage release, a 18-year non-vintage release. They do a 21-year vintage release. So right now we have the 2001 in stock. And then every year since 1978, they've done 100-year vintage release. So in 1878, they had the foresight to start putting down wine and saying, we're not going to touch this for 100 years. So, I mean, there's no other wine in the world that's aged a full 100 years in barrel. They have a cooper on site so that they can create small, like custom sized barrels so that when they kind of combine them and sort of whittle down, they can not have a ton of headspace in the barrels. And as kind of things evaporate over time, it's really unlike anything I've ever tasted. It's really, really special. It's rare. It's very expensive, but it's not impossible to get. And if anyone listening is interested, reach out. We can get some for you. Okay. But the cool thing is that you can kind of taste a part of this legacy for, a really kind of normal price. Like the 10-year Tawny is about, it's a little bit cheaper than what most 10 years from Portugal. I feel like a lot of 10 years from Portugal are like 45, and this retails around 40, so like you can taste a part of this legacy, and the 10-year always has a lot of older wines blended into it to give it complexity. So it's just, it's an incredibly special producer. So, it's fun. Our portfolio, we always say, like, we're not trying to show just one angle of Australia. We're trying to show everything. So like we have We have putt nuts, even, ones that are a little more, a little more of, I guess, a unique flavor profile in the Col Fondo.
We have the Vino Volta one coming in tomorrow.
Yeah, which is actually pretty clean too. We tend to not, we want all our wines to be clean and sound, Some of them are going to be a little bit more, have, I guess, maybe a little bit of volatility or a little bit of reduction, but in kind of sub flaw thresholds. And of course, cloudiness is a profile that sometimes people like or don't like. So we definitely have those wines that kind of participate in the natural wine aesthetic. And then we have kind of classic, Barossa wines and fortified wines. But for us, everything, needs to be a good representation of grape in place and really add a unique story to Australian wine, right? And so I think all the wines we've talked about today are sort of have kind of a unique story that contributes to the holistic understanding of what's going on in Australia. And so that's what we're really after with our portfolio. Unfortunately, but unfortunately, there are just hundreds of unique stories about Australian wine that haven't been told. So we have a hard time saying no. We constantly adding new producers to our portfolio. But it's just like, we're like, well, we don't have any Tasmanian, Chardonnay yet. We got to add them on. So it's really, it's an exciting time. I would say probably the most exciting time ever to be drinking Australian wine is right now.
Yeah, and that's the way I feel about when I see the amazing stuff that you have. I'm like, well, we don't have Nera de Avila from Australia yet, so we should definitely get some.
Well, and we feel like, I think a lot of restaurants we show our wines to, or retail shops, they'll have, kind of max, usually like a half a dozen wines from Australia. Can you imagine if a restaurant or a retail store had half a dozen wines from France? It's like it would never happen. It's like they would have more than half a dozen from each individual region of France. And so that's what we really, and it's not going to happen tomorrow. And Australia is not as, and as old and kind of, I guess, established wine country as France is, but it's, I'd say, every bit as exciting, if not more, and every bit as regionally distinct, where there's a big conversation to have about what does Tasmanian Chardonnay taste like versus Yarra Valley or Mornington Peninsula. Just the way that sommeliers and, consumers geek out about, Chardonnay from Meursault versus Puligny-Montrachet. And you can even get more minute than that, like talk about the different subregions of Tasmania and what those look like. And so I just think there's a lot of fun to be had learning about these wines and tasting them.
Yeah, there's a lot of what seems like new territory to be explored for people in Australia right now, which is really exciting.
Well, and there's just so many, not only producers, clearly there's hundreds of great producers of Australian wine that Americans have never been able to taste. But even more than that, there's whole regions, there's like whole regions that are doing exciting things that are considered some of the great wine regions in Australia that you just don't get an opportunity to taste the wines. Like when we started importing, there's a region in Northern Victoria called Beechworth that's considered one of the great wine regions of Australia. If you're going to have a premium wine program in Australia, you're going to have wines from Beechworth if you can get them. A lot of them don't go outside the state though. And, it's about kind of the size. It's like 140 hectares under vine, which is like the size of Hermitage in France, but you can find Hermitage in every state in the United States. And there was zero Beechworth wine anywhere in the United States. Wow. And that was just kind of like, like an aha moment for us. We were like, oh my God, this is crazy. Like these are just the foundational wines of Australia. And it's a whole region that people just haven't been able to taste,
And you and John just realized it would be irresponsible not to bring these to people in the US, right?
Exactly. It would be criminal.
Yes.
Yeah, we just felt like we felt like we found a niche, we felt like we had built these relationships and this knowledge in Australia, but we also, we both been American somms and wine buyers for so long that we felt like we knew what people were looking for here too. And it can be an uphill battle sometimes. I think it's hard when you sell wines that there's not a built-in demand for, that's like the first rule they teach you in, any sort of business books or business school. It's like, it's easier to supply existing demand than create demand.
Yeah.
And that's not what we're doing at all. There is no existing demand for these wines, and you, I'm sure, can attest to this. How often do people come in and ask for Australian wine?
Yeah, it's not a lot, but like the existing demand may just not be, the name Australia, but it might be a lot of other categories that these wines fit into. And I think that's
100%. You're absolutely, like, you're right. You're right. That's a great way to look at it. The existing demand is there. It's just not, people don't kind of call it out by name, because I agree. I think these wines, make a lot of people happy, whether you're a Burgundy drinker or a California drinker, or you like Spanish reds or whatever it is. I think there's something that you'll like in Australia. You just don't know to ask for it yet.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thanks so much. You'll have a lot of people asking for these a lot more often, I think, which we're excited about.
We are too. And we really appreciate, honestly, we always say, like, we need like ambassadors throughout the country, like people like you who are going to point to these wines when someone comes in and says, I like white Burgundy, but I want to try something different, or what's a cool sparkling I wouldn't have had. And so we need people across the country to kind of just really get behind these wines. So we can't thank you enough. We really appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and for bringing all these wines to us. Very excited to share them with everybody in our wine club.
Well, thank you so much. And please feel free to share my information too. People are welcome to reach out to me if they have any questions. And we can't wait to come back to Memphis. I got to bring John next time. I really love it over there.
Yeah. You're only 3 hours away. So
I know, it's so close.
Yeah. You could like accidentally bring him next time. Oh, sorry.
Just going to the store.
Yeah. All right.
So much, Sisco.
Jane Lopes of Legend Imports. Thank you so much for joining us. This is super fun. We'll see you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.